Well, you got to experience those creatures too, didn't you?
Yeah.
I understand you're sympathetic to them. They were great.
And no, it made it special. I thought, oh God, I'm going to work today and I'm going to work with thousands of rats.
Well, they get treated very well, don't they?
We treated them very well. They were very happy to be there.
You get their snack cards.
I don't know.
Lily Rose, I wanted to ask you about Robert described this as a kind of toxic love story in which Orlok has this obsession with this woman, but you give her agency, she has strength, she has a power of her own. What were your discussions like with him in shaping this character, making sure she was not just somebody in distress?
Yeah, I mean, it was all kind of there already on the page. I mean, the kind of many layers and complexities that this character has were evident upon the first reading of script, which is very special. So there was already like a very kind of rich and fleshed out place to begin working from. And it was also clear in the script how kind of central her perspective was going to be, and that we were really going to see the story from through her eyes, which I think is a perspective that we haven't as an audience been offered before, and I think it serves to deepen not just her character arc but the story as a whole, because she's going through so much, and it makes it a lot more engaging and a lot scarier when it's not just like a damsel in distress being pursued by this like horrific beast, but when there's a real desire for the beast coming from her part as well.
Do you think that giving her that kind of power and strength, does that deepen the story too? Because is that part of what Orlok is drawn to, as opposed to just somebody who's out there in the world? That strength she has, that self-possession is part of the appeal. Did you, Robert, ever discuss that kind of thing?
Well, she calls him. He doesn't just kind of pick her at random. She, I think, has like a darkness within her and conflicting desires. And at the beginning of the movie, you feel like this kind of like nascent sexuality in her, and this real loneliness that causes her to kind of cry out for something to come and comfort her. And he hears that call, and so yeah, I think it's clear that this is something that's coming from her, and it's, I don't know, it's interesting. Somebody asked me recently in an interview, like, how do you think that Orlok sees her? And I was like, that's really interesting. I've never really thought about that. Maybe Bill, you can elaborate.
Well, I think, yeah. I think Orlok lives in another realm, in another space of reality, and certain people can reach out into that plane, and Ellen is one that can, and is not only that can reach out to that plane, she's also very powerful in that plane and that reality. So when she reaches out, Orlok senses it and goes, okay, this is something that he hasn't encountered before, and it's part of who she is and her strength, and also maybe passing the ball to Willem here, because Von Franz is the one in the movie that explains it the best.
I was thinking, Von Franz also operates in that way. Why don't you come after me?
You're a mere tourist. Isn't that what you say in the film? You're a mere tourist. In the realm, yeah. Yeah, so there's different levels.
I feel like Von Franz, there's something manic about his energy. It's like he's lived a long life and maybe touched the void one too many times.
He's he's interested in the unseen. He's interested in things beyond this life, and that's one of the reasons why he appreciates where Lily's character is at, Ellen, and he's the only one that really sees her, because he understands an appreciation of the darkness where a lot of the other people are kind of suppressing it to have a good life, you know. There are worse things than bodily death, you know that, right? I mean, this guy is out there. This guy is out there, and you know, that's one of the, gives you another perspective on the goings on. And also, I loved it so much because he has this special relationship with her where he kind of helps her on her way and appreciates her sacrifice. But at the same time, he's playing this double game that he's got a good plan to get rid of Mr. Nosferatu.
Well, Nicholas, do you think that there's something, is it fair to say that Thomas Hutter doesn't really see her in full? He may love her and care about her, but when I spoke to Robert about the film, he said, you know, Nicholas has a really tough job because Thomas is, he's not equipped for this. He just wants to, you know, sell his properties and live very terrestrial. He's aware of terrestrial problems as opposed to these sort of profound spiritual ones. And I wonder what you thought about that. He called him a basic dude.
You called me a basic dude?
Not you. Not you.
I mean, yeah, I guess he is. I mean, I guess I am more the damsel in distress. In many ways, in this. And I was just a bonus for you.
Bonus.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the great tragedy of Thomas as a character. He's someone who's ill-equipped emotionally to understand Ellen, although he deeply cares for her. And he learns everything that she's been trying to explain to him too late. Suddenly all the darkness that's in the world and perhaps that was in himself that he couldn't explore is shown to him. And yeah, as he learns of it, it's already too late down that road because he's been chasing these monetary desires and beliefs that, you know, societal, you know, becoming wealthier and providing a better house and all these things will solve their problems, and obviously that's not the case.
Emma, I think in, you know, the different kinds of horror films are the kind that are just fun and crazy, and like the ones that really get under your skin, they have sometimes a profound sadness about them. And I think a lot of that falls on your character in this. She really loses a lot. She sees, I mean, we're not spoiling anything, she sees her two children killed by this monster that she doesn't understand. And I wondered if you could share with us what it's like to bring that sadness experience. It's not easy to perform. You've got to really push yourself to project those emotions.
Yeah, I really, I love Anna's arc in this film, and it's such a testament to the way that Rob works, that even the smaller characters are so integral to the whole story as a whole. The thing I found so heartbreaking about Anna's role in this is how, you know, unlike her husband, although, you know, Ellen's experience compromises her and goes against her religious beliefs and everything she's been brought up to believe and stand by, she can't just naysay it and deny it like her husband does, because she also loves her friend, and so she's constantly torn between what she believes is right and what she believes to be true, and then this sort of, this love for her friend. So I think that also adds a double sort of sadness. Because she chooses ultimately to, you know, move past the fact that she and Ellen have completely different beliefs and just be there for her, which I think is actually a lovely lesson for everyone, generally, in life. And she still doesn't have a great ending.
Bill, you've played some of the characters that have a sense of the infinite about them, a sense of inhumanity. This character, Orlok, while you were portraying him, were you trying to strip away any semblance of humanity, or were there elements and threads of it, remnants of it, that you wanted to keep as some connection with the audience? Which part of the spectrum did you find yourself leaning towards?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think I worked and I tried to understand him and his perspective on it, and yes, it's not perhaps a normal human perspective, but it's alive, and I think it's part of humankind, what he is and what he represents, and Robert had written a short backstory on the character that he shared with me, and that we never really elaborated or dug deeper into, but I read it and I found it useful, and he used to be a human, and then he turned into this way because of choices, and I think that it's sort of a fostering pact with the devil, and I think that he was someone that tried to obtain power but more importantly knowledge, and in the pursuit of ultimate knowledge, you're close to sort of messiahhood, but on the other side of it is the devil. So that helped me sort of understand why his intentions probably weren't to end up where you meet him in the movie, but that's where he's at, and that's where he's been kind of and again, to a testament to how well Robert writes. Like, there's, it feels when you read and when you work with Robert Eggers' script, it feels almost as if it's as ancient as the story you're trying to portray. So there's all these little clues in the dialogue. A lot of it was what Franz is saying. That was clues for me to understand the dynamic between the two of them. And then also stuff that Orlok says himself, that he's just an appetite, and she's his affliction, and he's a loathsome beast. And she awoke him from the state, so he's not a very cheery guy. But he sees something in her that awakes him, that motivates him, and then you can anchor that in lust or passion or whatever it is, but it's strong enough in him to cross the sea and bring the plague and everything that you see in the story. That's what he's willing to do. And all those things seem human to me. There's human aspects of it. So
I was going to say maybe just connection, because sometimes people, you often see very powerful people end up isolated in some ways. There's no one on their level that they can connect with. Sometimes it happens with people who live a very long time and have outlived their family and friends. And I assume there's a deep loneliness.
Deep loneliness. He's just tired of it, and tired of being what he's become, I think. And then there's moments of where I think I could, pierce it with fragility or vulnerability. I think that Robert really didn't want to have, we saw Kinski in Herzog's Nosferatu as this very, sad and vulnerable version of him, and Robert wanted him to be more like Jaws, this unmovable force. But as I was portraying him, I think that there was moments of fragility and weakness in there as well, and tried to make it as layered as possible.
Your first appearance in the film it's a slow burn. We don't see Count Orlok for a long time, and then when we finally do make his acquaintance or his presence lingers in the shadows. Nicholas, I wonder if you could share what it was like to perform those scenes with Bill as the person in the forefront while he's lurking back there. What do you recall from those days creating those scenes together?
It was really special just because of how brilliant Bill is, and how rooted that character feels, because of all the things he was just discussing, how he imbued it with so much emotion, and not just he didn't just create a monster that was just one thing. It made it feel very real. So then, you know, even though it's something that isn't of this world or a timeline I understand completely, there's, when you're in that room with Bill and the sets are so beautifully designed and real feeling and the atmosphere that Rob creates on set as well, all of those just make it feel as real as possible for you as an actor. So then it's easy to you know, trick your brain into thinking that it's actually happening, I guess.
Well, Bill, we did an interview and you told me about this sort of physical transformation you underwent. We could see that, but also vocally, you were training your voice to deepen it and learning an ancient, long-dead Eastern European language, Dacian. Can you share with us a little bit of your process in creating the physicality of Cowboy Walk?
Yeah, I mean, the voice was something that I worked the hardest on. I think I've ever worked on any role before. It was, Robert wanted it very deep and it needed to sound otherworldly and came from the grave, and the breath and all of that. And then also I knew that that the character, not only would the prosthetics and everything would look completely different to me, and he would live in the shadows for a long time. So what the audience would be left with is the voice and the breath and that thing, and that becomes the expression of the character for big parts of the film.
The rolling of the R's is like this croak coming from the cave too.
Yeah, and you know, there's been a lot of different iterations of Dracula and of Nosferatu, and but more in particular Dracula. So there's like, okay, how what is your Dracula gonna sound like?
Is there a temptation just to play one scene like that?
Yeah, exactly. So there was like the accent work, and Robert was like, well, nobody knows what a 300-year-old vampire born in the 1500s Transylvania would sound like, so he gave me a lot of freedom to do the accent, or explore the accent in a way that I found was fitting. But yeah, and then the voice, I worked with an opera singer to try to kind of anchor it and use my body as sort of resonated. So when I felt like I had it the best, I felt like my whole body was vibrating as I was speaking, and then I'm like, okay, I'm using all of it.
Well, Lily Rose, I know you've spoken about this quite a bit. The scene where she is going through these paroxysms and thrashing and a kind of spiritual possession. Robert makes it very clear there was any kind of digital altering to your body. That you're really contorting your limbs and twisting yourself and pushing yourself to an intense place for those scenes. What is your memory of creating those moments, and how did you come down?
Yeah, I mean that was a huge part of the character building process and the shooting process. It felt like most days there was some sort of a fit to be done. But it was it was intense, and it was beautiful. It was a huge learning experience for me, and you know, I like the challenge of it, and I liked it as a way in to understand the character, because you know, my castmates have heard me say this before, but it's true. It's, you know, it's like an externalization of like the internal of what she's going through, and of what's, you know, taking her over. And so I wanted those moments to be like rooted in a real emotion, and for the emotion to inform the physicality and vice versa. And yeah, it was, but it's also, it's like a dance, like you have to, I worked with an amazing movement coach who helped me tremendously, and the camera, famously Rob has a very, Rob and Jaron are amazing cinematographer, have like a very precise way of shooting, and everything is storyboarded, and the camera's moving in a very precise way, so, those moments can't just be like, emotion gone wild in the way that perhaps I had even imagined that they would be before getting there. It really has to be this like precise structure, but then I came to really appreciate it because you have to have that structure to fall back on, so that then you can find a freedom in the emotion, and also so that it's like sustainable and you can do it again and again.
Would you say it was something more choreographed or more intuitive and improvisational?
It was more choreographed for sure. I mean, I think there's room for like improvisation in the rehearsal process. I did a lot of rehearsal with our moving coach in the course as well, because the course it makes everything 10 times harder and like more like restricted. So there's room to explore for sure, because we had to find it all together, like myself and Rob and our movement coach. We had to find those moments. But then it was nice to, once we got on set, to really know what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. But the only one that really changed, Rob and I were talking about this the other day, but the scene between you and I, Nick, like towards the end of the movie, was a toughie, and it was really different at first. I don't even remember. I feel like I must have blocked it out, but it was really different at first, like the kind of crescendo of the scene. And then we realized that it wasn't really working, and so we had to find something else. And that's the only one that changed like on the day, but the rest of it was more prepared.
What do you remember about that? Yeah. Or which do any of you have any thoughts on that scene and performing that with her?
The thing that was most impressive about it, you kind of touched upon, is that thing of, it would be, if you had the freedom to lose yourself emotionally and physically, but have an edit to also save you and be like, oh, we can cut away to this moment and this moment, then it would still be incredible, but at the same time, watching Lily be able to navigate all those emotions and that physicality so precisely within the framing and the long shot, I was honestly blown away. It's some of the most impressive acting performance I've ever seen in my life. Yeah.
What's it like letting go of those scenes? We talked about Emily, the sadness of her story and her trajectory. Is part of acting being able to eventually just sort of shake it off and push your psyche, push your body to an intense place, but then let it go? What's it like for you?
I think sometimes you leave a job and it does feel like you have to sort of let some of that go. I've had that when I've sort of lived in places that I very much like lived in a different place and done the job. We had that because we were living in Prague, which is an amazing thing. It really, I think that kind of brought us together as an ensemble, and we relied on each other a lot for that. But I would argue that I think because of the way that Rob works, as these other guys were just saying, it's so precise that it almost, you don't lose yourself in the same way as you might on other jobs where it is just you have more freedom and then they sort of mess around with it in the edit, and they let you go to those places. Rob gives you space. It's very satisfying to work with him. You feel entirely fulfilled, but you fold yourself into this structure and this technique and this way of working. And really you're not the most important part of what's happening. It is the shot, it is the camera, it is the 4 or 5 other people in the scene and everything the camera has to get before it even gets to you. So given all of that, it doesn't feel like at the end of the day you're only taking away what you've been going through for your part. Yeah.
Bill, we did an interview once long ago after you finished shooting it, and you said you'd gone to your parents' house afterward to decompress and had dreams about Pennywise. It was still in your head, and I wondered, after an intense performance like Orlok, does that shadow stay with you for a while after this, in the same way?
No. No. He left silent like that. I was very thankful for it. Thankful to let him go. You see him burn up in a glorious place of ecstasy.
Well, this story is mostly heavy moments, but the professor brings some levity to it. He's kind of a rapscallion character. How did you walk that line where he gets to be funny and break a little tension, but still you take him seriously?
I have no idea. No, he's got a sense of irony, and also the gap between what he thinks and how his ideas are accepted by everyone else creates kind of a discomfort that he kind of spins a little bit, and I think a lot of the humor comes out of that. The gap between his world and everyone else's world. Yeah, I really wasn't that aware of it. You know, I played the scenes, it's in the writing. What can you say? But so I was always surprised when people started seeing the movie and saying, "Wow, thank God you brought a little levity to it." I didn't bring the levity, you know. It was it's in the fabric of what Rob created, really.
Well, I think we couldn't let you go without bringing up any memories you had or connections you made with the Shadow of the Vampire. A great performance that earned you an Oscar nomination. The aftermath with the actual monster. That must have crossed your mind while you were working on this from time to time. I know it's a coincidence, but
not really. It's, I mean, that was an important film, and it was fun film, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot about the value of, you know, how working with a mask, sometimes a literal mask, you know, heavy makeup can be so beautiful because it can really release you. And I had some imagination that that's what Bill was going through in his heavy preparation and the heavy prosthetics, because that's what I had in this movie, Shadow of the Vampire. But they're very different because the tone's different, and that was very much a comic thing about the making of Nosferatu. But certainly it made me very familiar with Nosferatu because in order to prepare for that Max-Shreck character, I was watching Nosferatu a lot because I was basically starting from copying his performance. Sometimes that's a good place to start. It gets you going, it gives you something to work on, and then something else takes over.
well, this new Nosferatu will be out in the U.S. on Christmas Day and in the U.K. on January 1st. Thank you all for being here and joining us.
People would say, but every one of his films have a female character like yours that seems to be bigger and more important than he even alludes to when you first approach it. And this is a very female forward perspective of doing Nosferatu. Just the idea that it starts and ends in your eyes and everything that you're doing. I'm curious for you what that was like, knowing that you were approaching this old story through that female perspective.
I mean, I think that was clear from the moment that I read the script that Rob had made this deliberate choice to kind of tell the story from her perspective. And I think, you know, it's beautiful because you can tell that he does that not just because, you know, not just for the sake of doing it or for the sake of even like modernizing the story, even though that's like a nice thing, but because it brings so much more depth to the story, because it's not just like a, you know, scary, haunting tale. It's like a tale with a lot of like longing and yearning and like, you know, like an internal
Desire.
desire, and also